CDH Films presents an animated storybook retold with building blocks. The Diary of Luke Castellan, a Percy Jackson prequel, by Rick Riordan. It was the dawn of a new century, a dawn of a new millennia, a dawn of a new age of heroes. More specifically, a new age of demigod heroes. Like, for instance, Luke Castellan, son of Hermes, and Thalia Grace, daughter of Zeus. It was hard to believe it had been 5 long years since Luke had ran away from home. Luke barely remembered what it was like to sleep in a real bed. Luke had only been 9 at the beginning. This year, he would turn 14. Just recently, he had escaped a random dragon attack. He probably wouldn't have made it out alive if Thalia hadn't coincidentally showed up. She had only been there because she was following her own animal guide of some sort. During the fight, Luke had gotten his sword melted away by the dragon's fire, and then the dragon gave him a nasty scar on his face. Now, the two of them had been sticking by each other's side ever since. Thalia carried a spear, and now Luke had to settle for a stolen golf club. Today, they were following the same animal that brought them together, an immortal goat from Greek mythology called Amalthea. Yes, the Amalthea who nursed baby Zeus. Thalia explained that the goat only appeared when something good was about to happen. She only knew that because she mentioned how the goat led her to Luke. For all he knew, their meeting was kind of random. He was just doing what he could to survive day to day like any demigod would. So now, they were following the goat as it led them to a large roundabout somewhere in Richmond, Virginia. The kids hid behind a large monument as they watched the goat pop its way over to a large house across the street. "I think she wants us to go in there," Thalia said. She ran up to the house without even waiting for Luke. Reluctantly, Luke caught up to her. By the time they reached the porch, the goat vanished out of thin air. When Thalia tried the knob, it was predictably locked. "Can you do your thing?" she asked Luke. His thing was rather difficult to explain. Supposedly, being a son of Hermes, he had the ability to unlock locks by touching them or even just sensing for the lock parts. Luke honestly hated it just as much as he hated his dad. He touched the knob, closed his eyes, concentrated, and seconds later, there was a clicking sound and he opened the door. The inside of the house didn't look any better than the outside. In fact, the place looked like it had been attacked. In the ballroom-style entrance hall, some pieces of furniture were thrown all over the place. Luke couldn't decide if it had been cut apart with a chainsaw or torn up by a wild dog. Even a crystal chandelier had fallen from the ceiling. In a few spots, they could see dried-up red marks on the floor, and they could just hope it was just some spilled wine or maybe ketchup. They were about to change their minds and leave, but then, slam! The door swung itself shut and somehow locked itself. Luke tried his thing again, but there was no use. He stood there concentrating for at least 5 minutes and got nothing. Thalia tried the windows, but the black curtains grabbed her and tried to wrap around her. Luke helped her break free by smacking at the curtains with his golf club. They looked down the 2 hallways on either side of them. "Hello?" a voice said from upstairs. "Somebody there? Do you need help?" Suddenly, what looked like a pair of red flashing lights blinked into existence. "Over here, follow me," the same voice said, but this time the voice seemed to come from the dark hall where the red lights were blinking. "Follow me, this way," the voice called. This time it came from the right. It seemed to come from either hallway. How could the same voice come from 2 opposite directions? "Up here, follow me," the voice called from upstairs again. Thalia and Luke looked at each other and quickly made one silent agreement. Upstairs. They were not going to wait for those red lights to come after them, and they did not dare to look back. They heard what sounded like a clack-clack sound from behind them, but they didn't think too much about it. They ran down the hall, around a corner, and from the last door on the left they heard, "In here, follow me." They did as suggested and slammed the door behind them. Just before they turned around, they heard the same voice from before, only this time, it was behind them. "Excuse me." They turned around and saw a man. a rather fragile-looking elderly man, with Einstein-looking hair and a sort of sad expression. He was dressed in a green coat that seemed to be made of reptile skin, and he held a green book in one arm. His mouth started to open as if he were about to speak, but when he did, the voice didn't come directly from him. It came from their left.
Hello. I'd like to apologize for the trouble I've caused you.
Luke turned to his left, and his heart almost stopped. On the left side of the room, in a large zoo-style cage, was the weirdest and most disturbing-looking animal Luke may have ever seen. How to describe it? It looked like a mix between a hyena and a horse. Instinct told Luke that this was the creature that was watching them in the dark hallway downstairs, because it had the same glowing red eyes. Its mouth looked disturbingly human. Or at least, the lips did. Its teeth? Well, they didn't exactly look like teeth. Both the top and bottom of its mouth were what looked like two solid horseshoe-shaped plates of bone. When it snapped its mouth, it made that same clack-clack sound they heard earlier back downstairs. They wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. They could hear growling outside the door, and the only window in the room had those same creepy black curtains on it. Luke looked back at the man and tried to sound intimidating. "Who are you? And what's that thing in the cage?" he asked. The man opened his mouth again, and again, his voice came from the left.
My name is Halcyon Green, and I am a son of Apollo.
With a start, they realized it wasn't the man talking. Like some disturbing reversed ventriloquist act, the voice came from the monster.
And I am terribly sorry, the voice continued, but I'm afraid it is you who are in the cage. You've been lured here to die.
Good news? The man didn't give any sign he was going to free the monster. Bad news? They left Thalia's spear behind downstairs, which left them with just the golf club. Luke pointed it at the man and said, You'd better start making sense. What do you want with us? And how is that thing doing that?
I understand your confusion, the monster said in the man's voice. The creature you see here is what they call the Leucrota. It is created by the gods and designed to be completely unstoppable. It also has the unique ability to imitate voices as its way to lure its prey. But for its reason for being here, it is used to speak on my behalf.
Wait, your behalf? You mean it's saying what you want to say? Luke asked the man. It's speaking with your voice?
Such is my curse, the monster replied.
Wait, did you say you're a son of Apollo? As in the Apollo? Thalia asked. You're a demigod? But you're so...
Old? The monster asked. Yes, I am.
The old man looked at his palms, as if he couldn't believe they were his. Luke totally understood Thalia's surprise. They had run into other demigods a few times before, some friendly, some not so much, but all of them had been kids like them. They knew that a life for a demigod was so dangerous, being sniffed out by monsters most of the time, they figured it was unlikely demigods could ever survive long enough to reach adulthood. But Halcyon Green looked around 60 at least. How long have you been in here? Thalia asked him.
I have lost track, the monster answered for him. Decades, perhaps. I was not much older than you when I received my punishment. Because my father is the god of oracles, I was born with a gift of seeing the future. I was warned never to share what I saw, or it would have angered the gods. But many years ago, I just had to act. I saw a little girl who was destined to die. Luckily, my powers helped me enough to find her, and I successfully saved her. She is safe now, wherever she may be, but all that was many years ago. Either way, I'll never see her again. I didn't even know her name. And so now, I am punished by being locked up in this house where I can never share my secrets or alter anyone else's destiny again. To tease me, Apollo gave me nothing else to wear but this coat, made from the mighty python's skin to remind me I am not an oracle. Apollo also took my voice away and linked the Leucrota to my thoughts so they can speak for me. They use me as bait to lure demigods here as Apollo's way to remind me my voice will only lead to death.
A coppery taste sat in Luke's mouth. He knew the gods could be cruel. Luke's own dad ignored him for 14 whole years. But Apollo's idea of a punishment for Hal? This was just evil.
No, Dahlia said. This isn't right. You did a good thing. You saved a life when no one else did. You should be rewarded, not punished.
Yeah, Luke said. You should fight back. Break out. We can help you. Oh, by the way, I'm Luke, and this is Dahlia. She's my friend.
Call me Hal, the monster said in Hal's voice. And I'm very sorry, but you are not the first ones to ever come here, or the first with the confidence to escape. Anything you can think of, many others before you have tried with no success. All the windows are blocked by cursed curtains that will strangle anyone who touches them. If the monsters don't kill you, the curtains will. The doors are heavily enchanted. They'll let you in, but not out. And the Leucrota are invincible. They cannot be hurt by any metal known to God or man. See for yourself.
Hal took out a dagger from his coat, approached the cage, and jabbed at the monster's head. The dagger didn't break, but there wasn't a single scratch, as if the monster was made of rock.
So that's it? Dahlia asked. You just gave up? You just sit here and let the monsters kill everyone who comes in here?
I am sorry, my dear, the monster said, but I have little choice. I remain trapped here. If I don't cooperate, the monsters let me starve. The monsters could have killed you downstairs, but they used me to lure you upstairs and keep me company. It eases my loneliness. But that cage is designed to automatically open when the sun sets. When that happens, the Leucrota will feast on your flesh. After you are gone, I'll settle for whatever rations you may be carrying.
You're as bad as the monsters, Luke said angrily. He didn't care if he may have hurt the old man's feelings.
You have every right to hate me, the monster said, but I cannot save you. By sunset, you will die. There is no escape.
It was a little after 2 p.m. At best, the sun would go down around 6 or 7. They weren't sure. Luke only just noticed how the whole room, ignoring the cage, was set up like a studio apartment. Looking around counterclockwise, there was a dishwasher, a sink, and an oven. 2 doors, probably a closet and a bathroom. A bookshelf, a computer desk, a chair, a window with another set of dark curtains, and a bed. Then Luke noticed in one corner of the cage was a square panel which seemed to lead to another room. The panel opened, and 2 more Leucrota walked in through it. Luke wondered how they could eat with such weird teeth. Then, as if to answer his question, one of the monsters grabbed some old armor laying in the cage with its mouth. It bit down so hard, it made a horseshoe-shaped dent in the armor, so Luke could only guess they would have no trouble chewing on their skulls.
Hal, can't you tell him to go away, please? Dahlia asked.
But then we won't be able to talk, the first monster said. Besides, whatever strategy you can think of, the others have already tried, said the second monster. There is no point in private talks, said the third.
But can they even really understand us? Dahlia asked. I mean, when they speak for you, do they sprout out whatever you want to say, when you want to say it? Or do they even understand the words?
One of the monsters said, with a perfect imitation of Thalia's voice. It was like hearing the perfect audio recording being played back. It was at that moment Luke finally understood just exactly how dangerous the Leucrota was. If he had heard a voice like that, like, say, for example, calling for help around a corner, maybe in the dark, without ever hearing about the monster, he probably would have followed that voice and probably wouldn't come back. Luke shook the thought out of his head.
The Leucrota are intelligent the way dogs are intelligent. one of them said in Hal's voice. They comprehend emotions in a few simple phrases. No saying for sure how much human speech they understand, but it does not matter. You cannot trick them. They remember things.
Dang it, I don't care, Luke argued. Look, you got a keyboard. Just write down whatever you want to say, okay? I don't want those things staring at me all day while we wait here to die.
Hal hesitated. Then he gave the monsters a shoo gesture, and they disappeared through the tunnel. It was an odd thing, waiting to die. Usually Thalia and Luke had about 2 seconds to save themselves from a daily monster attack. Now, they had less than a day to figure out how to escape this house. Secretly, part of Luke wanted to knock out the old man with his club and feed his body to the drapes. At least then the monsters couldn't use Hal to lure more demigods to their deaths, but he figured that wouldn't make him any better than Apollo. If anyone deserved a whack on the head with a golf club, it was Apollo, and all the rest of the deadbeat Olympian parents for that matter. Luke just started to notice the books on Hal's shelf, which mostly just had ancient history books or thriller novels. Hal typed on his computer, "You are welcome to read anything. Just please not my diary. It is private." Luke doubted the books would be much help, nor could he imagine Hal had anything interesting written in his diary, considering he had been trapped in this room most of his life. Hal showed Luke his computer's internet browser. Luke thought, great, we can order pizza and let the monsters eat the delivery guy. He almost thought of emailing someone for help, except they didn't actually have anyone to contact. On top of that, Luke never used email before, which was actually a common thing for demigods. He had Thalia learn the hard way that demigods using technology was like attracting sharks with blood. Even just pressing a single button was like sending out a signal letting monsters know your location. Luke scanned the bathroom, which contained some mortal medicine and first aid, and also some ambrosia and nectar. The closet had some spare snakeskin coats, but there didn't seem to be anything that could help them escape or fight the monsters. "I just don't get it," Thalia complained. "Why would Amalthea lead us here?" Then Hal typed, "Amalthea?" Didn't see any point in keeping it a secret, so he explained why they came in the first place. After that, Hal typed, "I've heard of Amalthea, but don't know why she led you here. The other demigods were only attracted by the treasure here." He got up and walked into his closet. Inside, he showed them a small safe, about as big as a microwave. Can you open that?" Luke asked Hal. Hal just shook his head and made a sort of knife-to-the-throat gesture. "Let me guess. It's a trap. Something deadly is inside?" Hal nodded. Then Luke knelt down to take a closer look. Luke didn't touch it, but he held out his hand close. He tried sensing for the lock's mechanism. His fingers felt warm. That only told Luke one thing. "Whatever's in here," he said, "it's bad news." "This is why we're here," Thalia said. "My dad wanted me to find this." Luke had no idea why she kept so much faith in her dad. Zeus hadn't treated her any better than Hermes treated him. Plus, this safe led a lot of demigods to their deaths. She fixed him with her intense blue eyes, and once again, she was going to get her way. "You want me to open it, don't you?" he asked her. "Well, can you bypass it?" "Maybe, but it's the second trap I'm worried about." What?" she asked. "I can try to disable it," Luke said, "but if anything goes wrong, this house will fill up with gas." He touched the lock. Hal put one hand on his left shoulder for support, and Thalia put one hand on his right. Luke's pulse quickened. Sweat ran down his head. He felt metal parts moving around inside, and then, click! Inside was a jar of green liquid. Hal exhaled, and Thalia kissed Luke on the cheek, which she probably shouldn't have done while he was holding that jar. They knew exactly what it was. Greek fire. Magic fire created by the gods. It couldn't be put out with water or a fire extinguisher. Thalia noticed something else was in the safe. A bracelet? It didn't seem much, just a plain metallic ring that fit perfectly around her wrist. But then, she stroked her finger on it, and then, whoosh! It unfolded into a bronze shield with the face of Medusa. Luke and Hal scooted back a few feet away. Thankfully, no one turned to stone. Luke remembered hearing stories about a shield like this. After the hero Perseus was finished using the head of Medusa for his quest, he returned it to Athena, and she decided to melt hot metal on the head and use it to decorate a shield for herself. No way this could have been that shield. It had to be a replica or something. Then Hal ran back to the keyboard and typed, "That safe has been unopened since before I was born. Apollo said my curse would end when the rightful owner claimed the treasure. Are you the ones?"
Wait a minute, Dahlia said. I had no idea this thing was here, and I'd never even seen it before. And if your curse is supposed to end now, does that mean you can talk again?
Hal opened his mouth, but no words came out.
Maybe we're supposed to help you break free from this place first, Luke guessed.
Hal typed, "Or maybe I die today?"
Well, thank you, Mr. Cheerful, Luke argued. I thought you knew what'll happen, with seeing the future and all.
Hal typed, "I haven't used my power in years. I told you what happened. Apollo punished me."
Oh, sure, Luke argued. Don't make it worse. You might mess up this little nice life you got going on for you. Luke knew it wasn't helping, but the old man's cowardice annoyed him. He let the Olympians use him like a punching bag for too long. He should have fought back. Hal flopped in his chair, and they realized he was silently crying. Dahlia shot Luke an irritated look. It's okay, Hal, she said. We're not giving up. The shield must be the answer.
Hal typed, "The monsters cannot be hurt by any metal."
Dahlia turned to Luke and said, Your turn for an idea.
Luke looked at the small dog door in the cage. If the bedroom door wouldn't open, and they couldn't get out through the windows with the deadly drapes in the way, then maybe that dog door was the only way out of the room. Metal weapons wouldn't work on the monsters, and if they tried opening the jar, it would kill not just the monsters, but everyone in the room. Then Luke tried the computer again. He tried searching through Wahoo and looked up the Leucrota, hoping to find their weaknesses. The internet had almost nothing on them, except that they were legendary animals and that they lure their prey by imitating voices. Then Luke tried typing in, "Help me kill Leucrota." The biggest hit he got was, "Help me cure leukemia." He was almost ready to let the curtains kill him. He looked at the clock, which said 4 p.m. Then Hal gestured for the keyboard. They switched places and Hal typed, "I will try to read the future. Apollo cannot punish me more than he already has. Dahlia, please take my hands." She hesitated, but she let him take her hands, and he closed his eyes. Seconds later, his eyes widened and went back to the keyboard. He typed, "You are destined to survive past today, but someday you will sacrifice yourself to save your friends. The visions are hard to explain. Years of hibernation. You will change once and change again. Your path will be sad and lonely, but one day you will find your family again." Dahlia dropped the shield and then clenched both her fists. That makes no sense. I'll sacrifice myself but won't die? Changing? Sleeping? You call that a future? And I don't have any family. All I had was my mom, and there's no way I'm going back to her again. Hal typed, "I am sorry. I cannot control what I see, but I did not mean your mother." Dahlia looked like all her blood drained from her body. Luke wasn't sure why she looked so scared. He knew she didn't like to talk about her old life back in LA, and as far as he known her, she really didn't have any other relatives besides her mom. "Dahlia," he asked her, "you know what he's talking about?" "Forget it," she answered. "Hal's powers are rusty." He was pretty sure she didn't believe it. Then Hal stretched his hands toward Luke, which told him it was his turn for a fortune-telling. Luke hesitated, but if Hal was right, and Dahlia lived past today, he felt at least some spark of hope. He had to try. When Hal was done, he yanked away and stared in terror. "Okay," Luke said. "I'm guessing you didn't see anything good?" Hal walked back to the keyboard and hesitated. Seconds later, he typed, "Fire. I see fire. I saw a sacrifice in your future,
but also a choice and a betrayal.
You mean someone betrays Luke? Dahlia asked. Because I know Luke would never betray me, and I could never do that to him either.
Hal typed, "His path is hard to see, but if he survives past today, he will betray."
Dahlia ripped the keyboard from the desk. Enough! She growled. You trap demigods here and take away their hope with your horrible predictions? No wonder everyone else gave up. Just like how you gave up. You're pathetic. Anger burned in Hal's eyes. They didn't think the old man had it in him. He rose to his feet, and for a second, Luke was afraid he might consider hitting Dahlia. Go ahead, she said, or are you too fragile? Stop it, both of you, Luke said, getting between them. And they both backed down. Hal, you mentioned fire, Luke told him. You said the monsters can't be hurt by metal, but have you ever tried to burn them? Hal took the keyboard again and typed, "What are you suggesting?" Well, Luke said, if we could open that jar and once it's open, would the fire in it spread out immediately? Hal typed, "Hard to be certain. I never used Greek fire before." Luke, what are you doing? Dahlia asked. Well, I'm not saying it's the best idea, but... He tried his best to explain his plan. Once the monster came back, they would throw the open jar at them and burn them, and somehow they would have to go around the monsters without getting eaten or burned alive. That could engulf the entire room in seconds, Dahlia warned. Luke's mind kept going back to what Hal said about a sacrifice in his future, and he got the feeling not all three of them would make it out alive. Then Hal handed Luke the green book he had before. He wrote a message for Luke to see. It said, "Luke, I want you to take this diary. It has all my predictions, notes about the future, and my thoughts about where I went wrong. It might help you." There was a second message that said, "You have an important future. Your choices will change the world. You can learn from my mistakes. Continue the diary. It might help you with your decisions." What decisions? Luke asked. What did you see that scared you? His pen hovered over the page for a while, and then he wrote, "I think I finally understand why I was cursed. Apollo was right. Sometimes the future is better left a mystery." Hal, your dad was a jerk, Luke insisted. You didn't deserve... Hal tapped at the page insistently. Then he wrote, "Just promise me you'll keep up with the diary." If I had started recording my thoughts earlier in my life, I might have avoided some stupid mistakes. And one more thing I'd like you to have. He handed the dagger from before to Luke. Thanks, but I'm more of a sword guy, Luke said. Besides, you're gonna need a weapon too when we get out of here. Hal started writing for a long while before Luke saw his next long message. On the next page, Luke read, "I will do it. Here's my plan. You two are going to hide in the closet, and I am going to wait in the bathroom with the jar. Then, when the monsters come, I will make them come to me, and I will trap them with me in the bathroom. Then you two are going to run, and I am going to open the jar. This blade was a gift from the girl I saved. She promised me it would protect its owner. A dagger doesn't have the same power or reach of a sword, but it takes the bravest and the cleverest warriors to use it. I'll feel better knowing you have it." "No, please," Luke begged. "We can all make it. We'll think of something." Hal wrote, "We both know that's impossible. I can communicate with the monsters, which makes me the logical choice for bait." Luke couldn't believe he was willing to sacrifice himself for two kids he just met. He didn't look like a cowardly old man anymore. He looked like a brave demigod ready to go out fighting. He wrote one last word. "Promise." "Okay," Luke said, sobbing. "I will. I promise." Luke hugged the old man. He wasn't sure why. Maybe Hal could have used one from just someone after all these years. Hal hugged him back, and then... clang! A sound like something big and heavy automatically unlocking came from the other end of the room. The bars of the cage were slowly rising, and the metal dog door started to open. Hal quickly shoved the two kids in the closet.
Hal picked up the jar and stepped into the bathroom. A split second later, all three Leucrota burst into the room. "In here!" Hal called. It was obviously still the monster speaking for Hal, but his words sounded brave and confident. "I've got them trapped in the bathroom. Come on, you ugly mutts!" It was kind of odd hearing a Leucrota insult itself, but they fell for it. Luke gripped Thalia's hand, and they burst out of the closet and sprinted for the dog door. It slowly started to close. Luke wedged it open with his golf club and pushed Thalia through first. Luke made it through, and the door snapped the club in half just before one of the monsters could snap at Luke's foot. They could hear Hal's voice yell, "You know what this is, you Tartarus scums? It's your last meal. For Apollo!" As Luke and Thalia burst into the hallway, the house shook, and they could already smell the fire. They ran down the hall, down the stairs, and Thalia picked up her spear from the floor. "Stop!" a voice shouted from above. One of the Leucrota jumped down from the stairs and jumped onto Luke. But Thalia faced her shield towards it, and it leaped away like a scared little puppy, sprinting in no particular direction. Still panicking, the monster ran around in circles, and then by accident, it ran too close to one of the black curtains. Like a spider catching a bug in its web, the curtains yanked at the monster and engulfed it completely. They heard a bunch of voices yelling, "Help! Help! 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 Help!" It was probably the voices of all the monster's past victims. The monster disappeared in the curtain's black, oily folds. Then Thalia had an idea. She pointed her spear at the door and zapped it apart. It was the power of Zeus. They ran across the street just as the house went boom. The house exploded in a green cloud of Greek fire. They did not wait around for the fire department to get here. After the first couple of blocks, they stopped for a breather, and Thalia let out a sob. He sacrificed himself for us, she said. "For a couple of strangers, and we weren't even that good to him. Why did he do that for us?" Instead of answering, Luke just stared at the dagger and diary, the only remains of Hal. Luke felt guilty for criticizing him for being a coward, even more guilty for not being able to save Hal. Luke wished he could have talked to him longer and find out more about what his future held. Sirens were screaming in the distance, which was their cue to go. The last thing they wanted was to be put in juvie or even foster care. They eventually found a local restroom to clean themselves up in. After that, well, they had no actual plan or any particular direction to go on. They just knew for sure they wanted to get out of Richmond as fast as possible and never bother coming back. They eventually stopped to rest next to an old red brick warehouse. "Maybe we could head for our old camp on the James River," Thalia suggested. Luke thought to himself that was at least a day away, but better than nothing. Cling! They heard a sound like something heavy and metal fall around the corner. A shiver ran down their backs. They didn't know what that was, but as demigods, they were prepared this time. They snuck around the corner and got a glimpse of a large metal board against a warehouse wall. Someone, or something, was under there. It's under there," Thalia whispered. "I'll lift it. You ready your spear," Luke said. He tiptoed over and put one hand on the metal. He counted silently. 1, 2, 3. He lifted the metal, and a little girl flew at them with a hammer. But Luke grabbed her, and she dropped the hammer. He managed to hold her tight, but it was like trying to hold down a wild animal. "No more monsters! No more monsters!" the girl cried. "Whoa, wait, Thalia, put your shield away. You're scaring her," Luke told her. And so she did. "Hey, little girl," she said, sweeter than even Luke had ever heard. "It's okay. We don't want to hurt you." "Monsters!" "No, I swear we're not monsters," Luke said, "but we know a lot about them. We fight them sometimes too." Slowly, the girl stopped fussing, and she studied the two of them with her large, intelligent-looking gray eyes. Just looking into those eyes, they could tell that this little girl was a demigod. That was for certain. As far as they knew, She would grow up to be really strong and powerful and really smart and beautiful.
You're like me?
She asked. Yeah, I'm Luke, and that's Dahlia, Luke said. You see, Luke paused for a while. This girl didn't seem much older than 7, so she probably didn't know as much as they did. Even with those intelligent-looking gray eyes, it was possible she didn't quite understand exactly what they were, or even what she was. There was quite a possibility that she might have never actually heard of the word demigod before. Well, Luke continued, it's kind of hard to explain, but you see, we're monster fighters. Where's your family? The girl's shocked expression faded to a frown.
My family hates me, she complained. They don't want me. I ran away.
Luke's heart felt like cracking to pieces. The girl spoke with such pain in her voice, very familiar pain. Luke locked eyes with Dahlia, and right there they silently made an agreement. No, a promise. They would take care of this kid. After what happened to Hal, well, it seemed like fate. One demigod died for them, and now meeting this girl was like a second chance.
What's your name, kiddo?
Dahlia asked.
Annabeth?
Luke couldn't help but smile. He never heard that name before. It sounded beautiful, and seemed to fit her.
Pretty name, he told her. Tell you what, Annabeth, you seem pretty tough. We could use a good fighter like you.
Little Annabeth's cute eyes widened.
You could?
Oh yeah, Luke said. In fact, how would you like a real monster-slaying weapon? He showed her the knife Hal had given him. This is celestial bronze, he explained. It works way better than a hammer. Under most circumstances, offering a weapon to a little kid may not have been the smartest thing. But this was different. This girl was a demigod, which meant you always needed a good monster-slaying weapon handy 24/7, which left normal rules out the window. It doesn't do as much damage as a sword, but it can find weak spots, Luke said. It takes the bravest and cleverest warriors to use a knife, and you seem pretty clever, Annabeth.
I am clever, said Annabeth.
Well, we better get moving, Annabeth, said Dahlia.
We have a safe house on the Drains River. We'll get you some food. You're not gonna take me back to my family, are you?
Annabeth asked.
Promise?
You're part of our family now, Luke told her. And I promise you, I will never let anything hurt you ever. I won't fail you like our families failed us. Deal? Little Annabeth smiled happily and said,
Deal.
She hugged Luke, and he felt better than he had in years.
Well, come on. We can't stay put for long,
Dahlia said. So the next thing they knew, they were camping somewhere out in the woods, and Luke took the first watch. He occupied himself by writing down the whole experience in Hal's diary. He couldn't stop thinking about Hal's predictions. He felt a huge weight on his shoulder, as well as something dark in his future. He was amazed by how Thalia and Annabeth's sleeping faces looked so peaceful by the fire. He thought to himself, if he was going to be the dad of this bunch, he knew he had to be worthy of their trust. Luke may have only been 14, and all 3 of them had no luck with their parents, but he was willing to try to do better. He looked to the north. They would probably make it to the James River by tomorrow. Then, they would try to reach his mom's house in Connecticut and try to sneak some extra supplies and food. He had no idea where they would go from there, but for now, he would just have to survive day to day, as demigods do. Being dyslexic and ADHD, as most demigods are known to be, he wasn't sure if he would be able to keep up with the diary, but he had a promise to keep to the old man. Also, he would promise to keep Thalia and Annabeth safe, and he would keep his promise to Hal. The last sentence he wrote in the diary for the night was, Luke Castellan, signing off for now.